Falling in love could get you executed if your last name is Kim and you live in North Korea. One romance ended with an entire family disappearing. Another ended in exile, and one ended with anti-aircraft guns. Before we begin, take a moment, like the video, and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. The Kim family has ruled North Korea for 3 generations. Kim Il-sung, the grandfather, Kim Jong-il, the father, and now Kim Jong-un, the current leader. They're treated like gods in North Korea. Their portraits hang in every home. People bow to their statues. Children sing songs about them in school. But here's what nobody tells you about being part of this family. Your life isn't your own. Your choices aren't your own. And if you fall in love with the wrong person, you might not live long enough to regret it. Because in the Kim family, love is a political weapon. Marriage is a strategic alliance. And choosing your own partner is basically treason. This is the story of what happens when members of the most powerful family in North Korea try to follow their hearts instead of the regime's plans. And trust me, it doesn't end well for anyone involved. Let's start with the basics. Why does it even matter who the Kim family members fall in love with? They're the rulers of the country. They can do whatever they want, right? Wrong. Because North Korea isn't just a dictatorship. It's a totalitarian state built on an ideology called Juche. And Juche is basically a religion that puts the Kim family at the center of everything. They're not just political leaders. They're supposed to be perfect, divine, beyond human weakness. And love, real romantic love, is a human weakness. When you fall in love, you become vulnerable. You care about someone more than yourself. You might put that person's interests above the state's interests. You might be influenced by them, manipulated by them. And if that person isn't carefully chosen and vetted by the regime, they could be a threat. So in the Kim family, marriages aren't about love.
They're about power, about maintaining control, about creating alliances within the elite circle that keeps the regime in power. Every single marriage is arranged. Every single partner is carefully selected. Their background is investigated. Their loyalty is tested. Their family connections are analyzed. And if they don't meet the requirements, they're out, no matter how much you love them. And if you try to go against this system, if you try to marry someone the regime doesn't approve of, you're not just breaking family rules. You're threatening the entire foundation of the state. And that's not something the Kim family tolerates. The punishment for defying these rules isn't just divorce or exile. It's disappearance, execution, the complete erasure of you and everyone you loved from existence. So yeah, it really sucks to be a Kim family member who falls in love. Before we talk about the family members who fell in love and paid the price, let's talk about the women who successfully married into the Kim family. Because their stories show you exactly what the regime expects from a proper Kim family marriage. Start with Kim Jong-un's mother, Ko Young-hoo. She was a dancer, born in Japan to Korean parents. She was brought to North Korea as part of a group of performers, and somehow she caught the eye of Kim Jong-il. Now you'd think being chosen by the future leader of North Korea would be a dream come true, but Ko Young-hoo's life was anything but dreamy. First, she wasn't Kim Jong-il's only partner. He had multiple women, multiple children with different women, and there was constant competition between these women for his favor and for the possibility that their son might become the next leader. Ko Young-hoo had to fight for her position. She had to prove her loyalty. She had to raise her children to be perfect representatives of the Kim bloodline, and she had to do all of this while essentially being hidden from the public.
Because here's the thing. Ko Young-hee had a problem. She was born in Japan. And in North Korean ideology, Japan is the enemy, the colonizer, the oppressor.
Having a leader whose mother was born in Japan was embarrassing. It didn't fit the narrative. So for years, Ko Young-hee was essentially a secret. The North Korean public didn't know she existed. She couldn't appear in public with Kim Jong-il. She couldn't be acknowledged as the mother of his children. She was erased from the official story. It wasn't until after her death in 2004 that the regime slowly started acknowledging her existence. And even then, they had to carefully craft her story, make her into a loyal revolutionary, someone who dedicated her life to the Kim family and the North Korean state. Ko Young-hee's story shows you what it's like to marry into the Kim family, even when you're chosen by them. You lose your identity. Your past gets rewritten. Your entire existence becomes about serving the regime. You're not a person anymore. You're a tool. Now let's talk about Ri Sol-ju, Kim Jong-un's wife. She's the current First Lady of North Korea, though that's not really an official title there. Ri Sol-ju was also a performer, a singer, part of a group that performed for the elite. She was young, attractive, and came from a politically connected family, all the right qualifications. Kim Jong-un married her in 2009, but the marriage wasn't publicly acknowledged until 2012. Why the delay? Because the regime needed time to investigate her background, to make sure there were no problems, to construct the right narrative about who she was and why she was suitable to be the wife of the supreme leader. And even after she was revealed to the public, Ri Sol-ju's life is completely controlled. She appears when the regime wants her to appear. She smiles when she's supposed to smile. She wears what they tell her to wear. She stands where they tell her to stand. There are reports that she's disappeared from public view for long periods, months at a time. Nobody knows why. Maybe she was pregnant. Maybe she was being punished for something. Maybe she said something wrong or acted in a way that wasn't appropriate. The point is, even as the wife of the supreme leader, she has no freedom, no autonomy. Her entire life is choreographed by the regime. This is what a successful Kim family marriage looks like. Complete submission, total loss of self. Your life isn't yours anymore. Now imagine what happens when someone in the Kim family tries to choose their own partner. Someone who doesn't fit the requirements, someone the regime doesn't approve of. That's when things get really dark. Kim Jong-nam was Kim Jong-il's eldest son. By traditional standards, he should have been the heir, the next leader of North Korea. But he wasn't. And one of the reasons why is because he fell in love with the wrong woman. Actually, women, multiple women, and he married them without getting approval from his father or the regime. Kim Jong-nam's first big mistake was falling in love with Shin Jong-hui, an actress. He met her in the early 1990s. She was beautiful, talented, and completely unsuitable to be the wife of North Korea's future leader. Why? Because she was an actress. And in North Korea's strict social hierarchy, performers are considered lower class. They're entertainers. They exist to serve the elite, not to marry into it. But Kim Jong-nam didn't care. He was in love, and he married her in secret. When Kim Jong-il found out, he was furious. Not just because his son had married without permission, but because he'd married someone so far below his station. It was embarrassing. It showed poor judgment. It suggested that Kim Jong-nam couldn't be trusted to make important decisions. But Kim Jong-nam didn't stop there. He later had relationships with other women. He had children with multiple partners. He lived in Macau and Beijing, far from North Korea, with his various families. And this lifestyle, this disregard for the regime's rules about marriage and family, cost him everything. Kim Jong-nam was never seriously considered as the heir to leadership. He was too independent, too unpredictable, too influenced by his foreign wives and his life outside North Korea. He couldn't be controlled. And in 2017, Kim Jong-nam was assassinated. Two women approached him in a Malaysian airport and smeared VX nerve agent on his face. He died within minutes. Most analysts believe the assassination was ordered by Kim Jong-un, his own half-brother. Why? Because Kim Jong-nam was a potential rival, a possible alternative leader that foreign powers could support, a threat to Kim Jong-un's control. But it's worth noting that Kim Jong-nam's forbidden marriages and his independent lifestyle made him an easy target. They gave Kim Jong-un an excuse. They proved that Kim Jong-nam wasn't loyal to the regime, that he couldn't be trusted. If Kim Jong-nam had followed the rules, if he'd married who he was supposed to marry and lived where he was supposed to live, would he still be alive today? Maybe. Maybe not. But his choices definitely contributed to his downfall. His love for women the regime didn't approve of didn't just cost him the leadership, it cost him his life. Let's go back a generation and talk about Kim Jong-il himself, because even the supreme leader wasn't free to marry whoever he wanted. Kim Jong-il's first marriage was arranged by his father, Kim Il-sung. The bride was Hong Il-chon, the daughter of a revolutionary hero. She came from the right family, she had the right political background, she was perfect on paper. But Kim Jong-il didn't love her. He reportedly found her boring, unattractive, not intellectually stimulating. But he married her anyway, because that's what his father wanted.
The marriage was miserable. They barely spent time together. They had one daughter, but Kim Jong-il showed little interest in either his wife or his child. And eventually, Hong Il-chon just faded into obscurity. She lived out her life in a state-provided residence, essentially a comfortable prison, while Kim Jong-il pursued other women. After that disaster, Kim Il-sung tried again. He arranged another marriage for his son, this time to Kim Young-suk, the daughter of another high-ranking military official. Again, perfect political credentials. Again, not someone Kim Jong-il chose for himself. This marriage lasted longer, but it wasn't happy either. Kim Young-suk gave birth to a daughter, Kim Sul-sung, but Kim Jong-il continued to have relationships with other women. He fathered children with them. He spent more time with his mistresses than with his official wife. Kim Young-suk is still alive today, as far as anyone knows. She lives in a residence in Pyongyang. She's completely out of the public eye, and according to defectors who knew her, she's bitter, resentful. She gave up her life to marry into the Kim family and got nothing but loneliness and humiliation in return. But here's the interesting part. Despite his unhappiness with arranged marriages, despite his many affairs and unofficial families, Kim Jong-il never officially divorced either of his arranged wives. Why? Because divorce would be admitting failure. It would suggest that the arrangements his father made were wrong, and you can't admit that the supreme leader was wrong. So these women just existed in limbo, married but abandoned, first ladies in name only. And the women Kim Jong-il actually loved, like Ko Young-ri, were never officially recognized. They were mistresses, secret partners. Their children were unofficial until it became politically convenient to acknowledge them.
This is what love looks like in the Kim family. Even when you're the leader, even when you have absolute power, you can't openly choose your partner. You can't marry for love. You have to maintain the fiction that the regime's choices are correct, even when they make you miserable. Now let's talk about Kim Yo-jung, Kim Jong-un's younger sister, because her story shows a different strategy for dealing with the regime's marriage requirements. Kim Yo-jung is powerful, really powerful. She's one of Kim Jong-un's closest advisors. She's been seen as his possible successor if anything happens to him. She handles propaganda. She manages his public image. She's the one who decides what the North Korean media says about the supreme leader. And she's married to the son of another high-ranking official, a man named Cho Sung, who himself comes from an elite family with strong ties to the regime. On the surface, it seems like a perfect political marriage. Two powerful families united, everyone with the right credentials and the right loyalty. But here's what's interesting. Kim Yo-jung almost never appears in public with her husband. She doesn't talk about him, he doesn't appear in propaganda photos with her. For all practical purposes, it's like he doesn't exist. Why? Because Kim Yo-jung has found a loophole in the system. She's technically married, which satisfies the regime's requirements. But she doesn't let her marriage define her or limit her power. She maintains her independence by simply ignoring her husband in her public life. It's a clever strategy. She gets the political benefits of being married to the right person without having to actually share power with him or be seen as subordinate to him. But there's a darker interpretation too. Maybe Kim Yo-jong didn't want to get married at all. Maybe she was forced into this marriage for political reasons, just like so many other Kim family members. And maybe by keeping her husband out of the spotlight, she's quietly rebelling against the system.
We'll never know for sure, because Kim Yo-jong isn't exactly giving interviews about her personal life. But her situation shows that even the most powerful women in the Kim family have to navigate these marriage requirements carefully. Even someone as influential as Kim Yo-jong can't just ignore the regime's expectations about marriage and family. She found a way to work within the system while maintaining her power, but she still had to get married. She still had to choose someone the regime approved of. She still couldn't just follow her heart and marry whoever she wanted, if she wanted to marry at all. The marriage restrictions don't just apply to the immediate Kim family. They extend to the entire extended family and the elite class that surrounds them. There are hundreds of people in North Korea who are connected to the Kim family by blood or marriage: cousins, nephews, nieces, in-laws, and all of them are expected to marry within the elite class, within families that the regime trusts. These arranged marriages serve multiple purposes. They keep the elite class small and controlled. They prevent outsiders from gaining influence. They create a web of interconnected families who all have a stake in maintaining the regime. If you're part of this elite class, your marriage options are incredibly limited. You can only marry someone from a handful of approved families, someone whose background has been investigated and approved, someone who poses no threat to the regime. And if you try to marry outside this circle, if you fall in love with someone from a lower social class or someone with questionable political connections, you risk everything, not just your own position, but your family's position too. There are stories, whispered by defectors, of elite family members who tried to marry for love. A young man who fell in love with a factory worker. A young woman who wanted to marry a teacher instead of a military officer. These stories always end the same way. The couple is separated. The unsuitable partner is sent away, often to a labor camp or to a remote province. The elite family member is reprimanded, sometimes publicly shamed, and then quickly married off to someone appropriate. And if they refuse, if they try to run away together or resist the arranged marriage, then both of them disappear, sent to prison camps, sometimes executed, always erased from official records. The regime doesn't tolerate disobedience, even in matters of the heart, especially in matters of the heart, because who you love and who you marry can threaten the entire system of control that keeps the Kim family in power. Here's something twisted. While the regime strictly controls who its elite members can marry, it uses romantic love in its propaganda to manipulate the general population. North Korean movies and TV shows are full of love stories, but they're not normal love stories. They're stories about people who fall in love while serving the state, about couples who meet while working on construction projects or fighting in the military, about love that develops through shared dedication to the supreme leader. The message is clear. Love is good, but only when it serves the regime, only when it makes you a better worker, a better soldier, a better servant of the state. There are propaganda posters showing young couples looking lovingly at each other while standing in front of factories or military installations. The subtext is that their love makes them more productive, more loyal, more willing to sacrifice for the nation. It's manipulation. The regime is taking a natural human emotion and twisting it to serve its purposes. It's telling people that love is only valid when it aligns with the state's goals. And this creates a bizarre contradiction. The regime tells ordinary North Koreans that they can marry for love as long as that love serves the state. But the elite, the people who actually run the country, can't marry for love at all. They have to marry for politics. It's one more way the Kim family is separated from normal humans. They sacrifice their personal happiness for the good of the nation. Or at least, that's the story the regime tells. The reality is that the Kim family doesn't trust love. They see it as a weakness, a liability, something that needs to be controlled and managed, not celebrated. Some of the most heartbreaking stories about love in the Kim family's North Korea come from defectors, people who escaped and can now talk about what they saw and experienced. There's the story of a woman who was part of the elite entertainment corps. She was beautiful, talented, and caught the eye of a high-ranking official. He wanted to marry her, but his family didn't approve because her background wasn't quite right. Her father had been accused of disloyalty years earlier, even though he'd been cleared. The official tried to fight for her. He argued with his family. He insisted that her father's old accusation didn't matter. But it did matter, because in North Korea, your family's political history follows you forever. Eventually, the official gave in. He married someone else, someone his family approved of. And the woman from the entertainment corps was reassigned to a remote province, sent away so the official wouldn't be tempted to continue seeing her. She eventually defected. She now lives in South Korea, and she says the pain of that separation never fully went away. She gave up the man she loved because the regime decided she wasn't good enough for him, and there was nothing either of them could do about it. Another defector tells the story of a young man in the military whose sister was married to a mid-level member of the elite. The young man fell in love with the daughter of a farmer. They wanted to get married. But his sister's husband found out and was horrified. A farmer's daughter? Marrying into a family with connections to the elite? Absolutely not. It would embarrass the family. It would hurt his own position. The brother-in-law used his connections to have the young man transferred to a military post on the Chinese border, about as far from the farmer's daughter as you could get while still being in North Korea. And he had the farmer's family watched to make sure the young woman didn't try to follow her boyfriend or contact him. The separation worked. After a year apart, the young man gave up. He agreed to marry someone his family approved of, and the farmer's daughter married someone from her own social class. But according to the defector, the young man was never the same. He became bitter, angry. He started drinking heavily. And eventually, he defected too, not because he was passionate about freedom or democracy, but because he couldn't stand living in a place that had stolen his chance at happiness. These stories aren't unique. Defectors tell similar stories over and over. People who were separated from the person they loved because of politics, because of social class, because of family connections. And the emotional damage is real and lasting. These aren't just unfortunate romances. They're traumas, wounds that never fully heal. Part of what makes the Kim family's control over marriage so effective is the propaganda surrounding the family itself. The regime presents the Kims as the perfect family, loving, united, devoted to each other and to the nation. Kim Il-sung is portrayed as a kindly grandfather figure who loves his people like his own children. Kim Jong-il is shown as a devoted son who carried on his father's legacy. Kim Jong-un is presented as continuing this family tradition of service and sacrifice. The propaganda shows them at family gatherings, smiling and happy. It shows them visiting orphanages and schools, demonstrating their love for all North Korean children. It creates an image of familial harmony and affection. But it's all fake, because the reality of the Kim family is backstabbing, paranoia, and ruthless competition for power. Kim Jong-un had his uncle, Jang Song-taek, executed in 2013. This was his mother's sister's husband, family. And Kim Jong-un had him arrested, put on trial, and killed. Some reports say he was executed with anti-aircraft guns, though that might be exaggeration or propaganda from South Korean sources. Why was Jang executed? Because he was seen as a threat. He had too much power. He had his own network of loyalists. He might have been planning a coup. Or he might have just been too ambitious.
Either way, Kim Jong-un couldn't tolerate the threat, even from family.
And then there's the assassination of Kim Jong-nam that we talked about earlier. Kim Jong-un ordered the murder of his own half-brother. They shared a father. They were blood. And Kim Jong-un had him killed in a public airport using one of the most horrific chemical weapons ever created. This is what the Kim family is really like. Not loving, not united, but paranoid, violent, and willing to kill anyone who threatens their power, even their own relatives. So when the regime talks about the importance of family and the sanctity of marriage, it's deeply hypocritical. They don't value family. They value power. And they'll destroy any family connection that threatens that power. The perfect family image is just another tool of control, another way to manipulate the population, another lie in a system built on lies. Let's talk about what it's like to grow up as a child in the Kim family, because the restrictions and control start from birth. Kim family children are raised in complete isolation. They don't go to normal schools. They don't play with normal children. They're educated by private tutors, often brought in from other countries. They're taught that they're special, superior, destined to rule. But they're also taught to be paranoid, to trust no one outside the family, to see every person as either a useful tool or a potential threat. They can't form normal friendships. They can't have normal childhood experiences. They can't fall in love naturally like other kids do. Instead, their entire childhood is preparation for the role they'll play in maintaining the regime. If they're in line for leadership, they're groomed for that from a very young age. If they're not, they're trained to support whoever is the leader. And when it comes time for them to marry, they don't even have the fantasy of choice that normal people have. They know from childhood that their marriage will be arranged, that their partner will be chosen for them, that love is irrelevant.
Kim Jong-un's children are growing up this way right now. He has at least 3 kids, maybe more. Their names are known. Their ages are roughly known. But that's about it. They're kept completely hidden from the public. When they're old enough, they'll be married off to suitable partners, children from other elite families, people who can be trusted, people who strengthen the regime's power structure. And if any of them fall in love with the wrong person, if any of them try to choose their own path, they'll face the same consequences that every other Kim family member has faced: separation, punishment, possibly death. It's a cycle that repeats generation after generation. Children raised in isolation, denied normal human connections, and then forced into political marriages that serve the regime. There's a story that defectors whisper about. It's never been confirmed. The details are fuzzy. But if it's true, it's maybe the most heartbreaking story of forbidden love in the Kim family. According to the story, there was a nephew of Kim Jong-il, not one of the well-known ones, but a more distant relative, the son of one of Kim Il-sung's cousins or something like that. Still part of the Kim bloodline, but not in direct line for leadership. This young man fell in love with his bodyguard, another man. They had a secret relationship for years. They were careful, discreet. They knew what would happen if anyone found out. But someone did find out. Maybe someone saw them together. Maybe someone reported suspicious behavior. Maybe someone who knew decided to use the information for political advantage. The young man was arrested. So was his partner. They were both interrogated. And according to the story, they were both executed. Not just killed quietly, but executed publicly in front of other elite family members as a warning. The message was clear. This kind of love, this kind of relationship, was not just forbidden. It was an abomination, a threat to the natural order, something that had to be stamped out completely. And both men's families were punished too, demoted, some members sent to labor camps, the entire extended family tainted by association. Now, like I said, this story has never been confirmed. It might be exaggerated,
It might be completely made up, but defectors say it's true. They say it happened sometime in the late 1990s or early 2000s. And whether this specific story is true or not, the fact that it's told says something important. It says that in North Korea, in the Kim family, even the possibility of love that doesn't serve the regime is so dangerous that it results in death. So why does it suck to be a Kim family member who falls in love? Because love makes you vulnerable. It makes you care about something more than the regime. It gives you priorities that might conflict with the state's priorities. And in a totalitarian system like North Korea, that's unacceptable. The Kim family has built its power on control. Total, absolute control. Control over what people think, what they say, what they do, and yes, who they love. For the general population, this control is exercised through surveillance, punishment, and propaganda. But for the Kim family itself, the control is even more intense, because they're supposed to be the perfect example, the model that everyone else follows. So they can't show weakness, they can't make mistakes, they can't choose their own partners and risk bringing someone unsuitable into the inner circle. Every marriage is a political calculation. Every relationship is scrutinized for potential threats. Every emotion is subordinate to the needs of the regime. And the result is a family of people who are incredibly powerful, but also incredibly trapped. They have wealth and privilege that ordinary North Koreans can't even imagine.
But they don't have the freedom to make the most basic human choice: who to love. Kim Jong-nam tried to choose his own partners and ended up assassinated. Kim Jong-il was forced into loveless arranged marriages and spent his life with mistresses he could never officially acknowledge. Kim Yo-jong had to marry someone politically suitable and keeps him hidden from public view. Even Kim Jong-un, the supreme leader with absolute power, married someone who was carefully selected and vetted, someone who came from the right background and had the right political connections. We don't know if he loves Ri Sol-ju, or if she was just the best option from a short list of regime-approved candidates. The Kim family preaches about the importance of family and the sanctity of Korean culture. But they've created a system where family means nothing if it conflicts with power, where love is dangerous, where choosing your own partner is basically treason. And this system has consequences beyond just the Kim family. It affects the entire elite class. It affects anyone who wants to maintain their position in North Korean society. It creates a culture where genuine human connection is suspect, where emotional authenticity is dangerous. People learn to hide their feelings, to suppress their desires, to accept marriages they don't want because the alternative is destruction. And that's why it sucks to be a Kim family member who falls in love. Because in North Korea, love isn't celebrated, it's controlled. And if you try to love the wrong person, you don't just lose your relationship, you might lose your life. The Kim family has ruled North Korea for over 70 years, 3 generations of absolute power. And in all that time, there's no evidence that any of them have married purely for love. Every marriage has been political. Every partner has been chosen for strategic reasons. That's the price of power in North Korea. You get wealth, you get privilege, you get the ability to shape an entire nation according to your will. But you don't get to choose who you love. You don't get to follow your heart. You don't get to be fully human. And maybe that's the ultimate tragedy of the Kim family. They've built a system that dehumanizes everyone, including themselves. They're prisoners of the very regime they created, trapped by the ideology they enforce. They can execute anyone who threatens them. They can start wars. They can reshape their country's economy and society. But they can't marry who they want. They can't love freely. They can't make the most basic choice that even the poorest person in the world can make. So the next time you see Kim Jong-un in the news, standing next to his carefully selected wife, remember this. Behind that image of power and control is a man who never got to choose his own partner, who never got to fall in love naturally, who never got to experience one of the most fundamental human joys. And the same is true for every member of his family, every relative, every person connected to the regime's inner circle. They're all trapped in the same system, all forced to sacrifice love for power, all living lives that are carefully choreographed by the regime's needs. That's what it means to be part of the Kim family. That's why it sucks to fall in love when your last name is Kim. Because your love is not your own. Your life is not your own. You belong to the regime, and the regime doesn't care about your happiness. It only cares about maintaining control, no matter the cost. Subscribe if you want more stories about the world's most secretive regime.